Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We turn now in the Johnson edition to poem 366, Although I Put Away His Life. Now, this is an interesting poem for a number of reasons. It isn't clear exactly who the his in this poem is. It's another quote-unquote marriage poem. In some ways, we're back to poem 246. You guys will maybe remember when we saw this poem. Just to remind, forever at his side to walk, the smaller of the two, brain of his brain, blood of his blood, two lives, one being now, forever of his fate to taste, if grief the greatest part, if joy to put my peace away for that beloved heart, all life to know each other, whom we can never learn, and by a change called heaven, wrapped neighborhoods of men, just finding out what puzzled us without the lexicon. You'll remember this is, some scholars have called it, along with 246, this is the most unfeminist view of marriage, if you want to say it that way. Our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments as well, where we mentioned, for example, the idea of of Emily and her relationships with men and the challenges that were accorded to that. And then I'm hopeful that you've already read through our preceding 365 poems. We just finished with 365, Dare You See a Soul. And if you have done that, you'll know that this is one more of those poems where Emily references a male, but we don't know who the he is of the poem. Now, the other challenge that I'm going to throw at you guys is, this poem, like so much of Emily, can be read as satire. And we'll think about, for example, Judy Brady's I Want a Wife. We've given a lecture on it at learnstrong.net, that very first satirical essay of Ms. Magazine so many years ago. Or, for example, Bradstreet's To My Dear and Loving Husband, which, as we've commented at learnstrong.net, you can read that as serious love poem, or you can read that as satire. It isn't altogether clear how we're supposed to read this. This is the way she says it. Although I put away his life, an ornament too grand for forehead low as mine to wear, this might have been the hand that sowed the flower he preferred, or smoothed the homely pane, or brushed the pebble from his path, or played his chosen tune on lute the least, the latest, but just his ear could know that whatsoever delighted it, I never would let go. The foot to bear his errand, a little boot I know, would leap abroad like antelope with just the grant to go. His weariest commandment, a sweeter to obey than hide and seek, or seek to flutes, or all day chase the bee. Your servant, sir, will weary, the surgeon will not come, the world will have its own to do, the dust will vex your fame, the cold will force your tightest door some February day, but say my apron, bring the sticks to make your cottage gay, that I may take that promise to paradise with me, to teach the angels avarice, you, sir, taught first to me. By the way, in 1929, when this poem was first published, the last line was actually changed to your kiss first taught to me, which is going to make this poem even more a fascinating study. Notice it begins with the word although, and that's one of the giveaways, it seems to me, that maybe this poem can be read as satire, although maybe it is an observation. Emily says that this is what I gave up when I said no to a marriage proposal, although I put away his life. Notice again the repetition of his and he. We don't know who, right? She turned him down, in other words. An ornament, notice she says marriage was an ornament too grand for forehead low as mine. Again, some have seen this as just ironic language, right? As mine to wear. That might have been the hand. It makes us think that we've commented on 696 and Acres of Perhaps. That might have been the hand. In other words, this might have been what I could have. I think Emily is dealing with the possibility of the question. All of the other young ladies around her were getting married and going through the process of being, a wife, domesticated in some powerful ways. Emily says, I gave up all of that. What did I give up? And then she'll say it. I could have sowed the flower that he preferred. Or, notice the repetition of or, smooth the homely path, or push the pebble from his path. Again, we'll see this as just blatantly ironic or satiric. Or played his chosen tune, you'll remember Emily was quite good on the piano. On lute, the least, you'll remember lute from 261. The latest, but just his ear could know that whatsoever delighted it, I never would let go. And again, some have seen the rhythms and the meter here to be kind of a game she's playing, right? The foot to bear his errand, a little boot, I know. Again, we're back to the idea that little has been used in 172 poems. Think about boot from an earlier poem, and she was playing that game. Would leap abroad like antelope, but just the grant to go. I'd be so prepared to do anything I could to take care of him. His weariest commandment, I love the use weariest, I think that's a giveaway, a sweeter to obey than hide and seek, or skip to flutes, we're back to the tunes, or all day chase the bee. In other words, living as a wife would have been amazing in every way. Your servant, sir, we'll come back to this sir at the last, right? Your servant, sir, will weary. The surgeon will not come. The world will have its own to do. The dust will vex your fame. Now, again, if you read this poem as satire, this is the turning of the poem. In other words, she's beginning to make some observation about how it all would end. The cold will force your tightest door some February day, but say my apron bring the sticks to make your cottage gay. In other words, I would find a way to make our house warm. I would go out and find wood and bring it for the fire, that I may take that promise to paradise. We're going to see paradise in the next poem, by the way, with me, to teach the angels, back to poem 231, avarice, you, sir, taught first to me. Now, there's, again, two ways to read this poem at 2a. I think one is the argument that sacrifice is the heart of marriage and therefore necessary. But the follow-up to that observation is that why Emily turned it down? In other words, she was willing to sacrifice. It's just she wasn't willing to sacrifice for the fame, but rather for fame. In other words, she decided, whatever it was that I would have contributed to a marriage and a home to collect sticks, now I do something different. I collect sticks, but the sticks are poems, and the ones that we're reading. Note at 2b the repetition over and over, or and his and the like. The ironic voice, some will read this with irony. At 3a, I mentioned, for example, Anne Bradstreet's To My Dear and Loving Husband. Judy Brady's obviously is just straight up satire. David Priest, the scholar, has pointed out that in Chekhov's Ivanov, you'll maybe remember this line from the play Ivanov, that Sasha will say it this way, quote, to Ivanov, quote, it would be sheer happiness for me to copy out your papers all night long, or watch over you all night so that no one woke you up, or just walk with you for miles, 100 miles, the greater the effort, the greater the love, end quote. Finally at 3b, how do you read this poem? Do you read this as sweet, or do you read this as satire, or do you read it as Emily, which means it could be both? Brilliant, right? Thank you.